I'm age 25, starting at zero. That is 600 a month. That's not too bad.
All right, guys, let's break this guru information down. Now, I will say this guy does give out great information, but I think here he's a little off base and a little wrong, because what a lot of these people do is they assume many things. They get people very excited, that make people make certain financial decisions. And by the time they hit 65 and they go to retire and they don't have nearly the money that they were just talking about, they're like, what the did I work my whole life for nothing? And that happens to so many people, so many people. So let's have a real breakdown of what actually is happening. Now, in his numbers, he goes on and says that if you start at 65 years old with $600 a month being thrown into your 401k, by the time you're 65 years old, you'll have $2 million. Now, there's a lot of assumptions there. A, that you're making enough to put $600 a month into a 401k account. A lot of people aren't. I mean, I know when I started off straight out of college, I was making $40,000. That's $600 a month is 20% of my pay every single month. I'm already paying 20% to the government. Now I'm paying 20% to that. I mean, that leaves me to live off of 60% if I'm lucky, right? And the next scenario is that they assume 8% growth in the stock market. Now, this is a chart of the S&P 500, and it's true that over the course of the existence of it, it has risen, and the stock market has risen by 8%. But here's the problem with that assumption. It assumes that you're going to retire when it's up, not when it's down. Okay? Because when it's down, you've got a big problem. Let's just take, for example, September of 1968, and really, if you wanted to, I could go back to 1964, right? Your value didn't change from 1964 to 1968. But if you look at this, if you retired in 1968, what happens if all it did was go down? It doesn't go up by 8. It's an average. So let's take a look at that real quick. All right, so 1968 to 1982, so 14 years. So how old are you now? You started at 65, now you're 79, and you have a third of your 401k. Not only are you drawing on that 401k, but it's also going down in value, okay? That's a problem. So what a lot of people like to hype up, they like to hype up these, oh, well, the stock market goes up by this dollar amount, percentage every year, and you just do it. Yes, but the problem with the 401k is that you can't pull it out when you want to pull it out. When a market's at a high, you have to pull it out at a certain age, like 65 or more, or otherwise you receive a 10% penalty on top of paying the income taxes for it. But you have to start taking withdrawals on it by a certain window. So you really have this very small window. And I believe that's 72 years old at this point. I think they're trying to raise it to 73. But basically between 65 and 72 years of age. So you get a 7-year window to where they make you withdraw your 401k even if the market's at a bottom. You don't want to do that. But granted, you've worked your whole life for this money. Now you need to do it, right? But this is how it's all set up. This is how Wall Street sets these things up, because they want you to keep your money in there as long as humanly possible. But the government's fighting a battle saying, hey, we want that tax money. We want you to start taking it because it was tax-free when you tossed it in there. So there's a battle between those two forces, and they really don't give a shit about you or your retirement. They want the money. They want to throw it in, their hedge funds and pension funds. They want to manage it, every different, Vanguard and place that they have at Fidelity, all these types of things, they're all the same. At the end of the day, the problem you have is if you don't retire at a peak, you end up in this trough and this downward angle. So you're taking your withdrawals while you're losing money. Look, think about if you retired in 1964. Here it is over here. In 1991, it finally gets back up to where it was in 1964. That's almost 20 years later. Wait, that's almost 30 years later. I'm sorry for the bad math there. Almost 30 years. You retired at 65. Do you think you're living to 95? Now you can hoopla. Got my 2 mil, That's what he's talking about. You get your 2 mil if it hits that point. You got 30 years. And that happens across the board. In 2000, this is actually over here, right around the 2000 mark. If you would have gotten in there, by the time it gets back up to where it was when you retired is 2015. 2015 is 15 years after you retired. Like I said, you're withdrawing on this. The market's going down. So unless you really hit one of these strides where it's going up when you start making your withdrawals, you're really fucked at the end of the day. And what's even worse is that that's if you put it in the S&P 500 index. Now, don't get me wrong, that's why people risk their money in other stocks. They toss it in Apple, they toss it in Microsoft because, those do go up and they pay dividends now. But if let's say you just threw it in that S&P 500 index, which is mostly what people recommend you do, like Warren Buffett and all those people, just put it in the index, you'll beat the market, blah, 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 right? You put it in there, you're earning this 8% each year. You have your ups, you have your downs. Let's say you did everything perfectly. You got to your 2 million, you're at 65 years old, you're ready to rock and roll. Now you're like, well, shoot, I got the 2 million. What do I do with it? What do I do? Well, you have to take portions of the government requires you by 72, 73 to at least start withdrawing portions of that money. But the more you withdraw from it, that balance just gets closer and closer to zero. Well, your biggest fear, I'm sure, if you're 65 years old, is what if you live to 95? Well, what if I have to do 30 years of withdrawal? Well, at $2 million, that ain't too bad. It's $66,000. You're going to have to pay income taxes on that. So maybe you end up with, somewhere around 55 to 60 grand. But can you live off of that? Are you able to live off? You may be able to live off that now, but inflation, they target being 2% every single year. So the prices of everything will go up 2% every single year. So what you are able to pay for now in 40 years, if you're a 25-year-old, is going to be exponentially higher. Can you live off of that? Probably fucking not. If I'm being honest, sorry my French, but probably not. And okay, let's just say you said, okay, listen, for the safety net, I want to take the $2 million. I'm going to leave it in that S&P 500 index because it pays a dividend. Okay, maybe the market's going down, right? And you don't want to withdraw it right now because your $2 million is worth $1.7 million, and it's on this downward thing. But you go, hey, listen, I'll just take that cash flow. I'll take that dividend payment. And what ends up happening? Well, the S&P 500 index right now, the dividend payment's 1.5%. 1.5% on $2 million is $30,000. 30 grand a year. And you're still gonna have to pay income tax on that when you withdraw it. But $30,000, that's what you're gonna be able to live off of. You got $2 million in your 401k and you get to live off of 30 grand. Or you could start taking $66,000 a year. However you break it up, you could take $100,000. It's however you decide to divvy up and start taking withdrawals on that money. But if the market's going down, why would you want to take money out that you're waiting to go back up? It's the 401k system, the way that they have it set up, it is structured to make Wall Street rich, to get the government the tax money that they need, and it's really not structured to help you out in any way, shape, or form. I don't know very many people, and I know a lot of older people that are woohoo about their 401k. Honestly, I never hear them fucking talking about it. I hear them bagging groceries at the grocery store, but I don't hear them talking about it. So at the end of the day, what you got to do is you got to think through all these things for your future, for what you want to do. Me personally, I do multiple different things because I do invest in my 401k. I did when I was younger till I kind of learned a lot of this stupid stuff. Me personally, I buy rental properties because as inflation goes up, rents rise, and that gets you constant cash flow, and you don't need nearly as much as $2 million to have enough cash flow to afford your bills, especially if you get those mortgages paid off. I know it's really challenging right now to buy a home, but it is one of those things where I think it's a great investment long-term, but I'm not going to give you guys any financial advice. I'm just going to say that this is a little bit wonky, the way that they like to say, this is all you got to do. This is all you got to do. And these are numbers and they're trying to make a video, but at the same time, it's really misleading if you don't tell the whole story. If you like hearing the whole story, give me a follow. I'd really appreciate it.